I've been with Emily Carter for 3 years. She never raises her voice, never gets jealous, and handles everything with composure so much that my friends would say I won the relationship lottery. You're lucky to have a girlfriend who never throws tantrums, they'd say. And I believed it too, at first. But something started gnawing at me after I accidentally stumbled upon fragments of her past with her ex, Ryan Kim. They had screamed at each other, slammed doors, made up in passionate embraces, cried in hotel parking lots, and clung to each other like they couldn't live without the chaos. I saw her laugh so hard she couldn't breathe, cry so desperately she looked like she'd collapse. I wasn't in any of those memories. And ever since then, that seed of comparison started to grow in my chest like a weed. It really began to sprout on a rainy Tuesday evening as I sat in Emily's car, riding shotgun. I played a voice message from my coworker, Olivia. You. No matter how many times you reject me, I won't give up, Olivia's voice rang out confidently. She knew I had a girlfriend. I had made it crystal clear that I wasn't interested, but she kept pushing, chasing, confessing. I didn't delete the message on purpose. Maybe I was trying to test something. Emily just smiled and said, "You're quite charming, huh?" That was it. No frown. No sharp edge in her tone. Just a teasing chuckle. Like my being pursued by someone else wasn't worth more than a passing joke. I turned to her and asked bluntly, "Why don't you ever get jealous?" She didn't even blink. "Why should I? I trust you. You've always been rational and calm." I wasn't sure if I should be proud or insulted. "So if I went out with another girl, you wouldn't care?" I pressed. She kept her eyes on the road. "You didn't sleep with her, did you?" I felt like I was punching air. 3 years of dating, and it felt like we were business partners with emotional boundaries instead of lovers who tangled up in sheets and hearts and dreams. And the worst part? I didn't know how to complain about something that didn't look wrong on the surface. But that day, sitting in her car, something snapped when we got rear-ended. We got out to check. The other car, a Porsche, had a couple arguing loudly, shouting, blaming each other. The man turned around and locked eyes with Emily. Her phone fell from her hand and hit the asphalt with a muted thud. I bent down to pick it up, but I was already staring at the guy, and it clicked. I had seen his face before. 1 week ago. On her phone. His name was Ryan Kim. Her ex. And now, standing in front of us in the rain, he looked like a ghost that had crawled out of Emily's past to haunt us both. The Porsche's bumper was wrecked, but Emily's G-Wagon had only a few scratches. The woman in the Porsche muttered something about insurance, but Emily brushed her off. "No need," she said, cool and composed. She pulled out an umbrella and held it over me. Even in this weird situation, she was graceful. Too graceful. That same grace made me feel like I never really reached her, never saw her lose control, not even for me. The rearview mirror showed Ryan shrinking in the distance, but the look in his eyes stayed with me, haunted, longing, unfinished. We arrived at what I thought was her place, but when I looked around, I realized something strange. She had dropped me off at the same place she picked me up. My office. She drove me in a loop. I stared at her, confused. "Ryan, I mean, Emily. I was going home after work, not coming back here." She looked genuinely startled. I rolled up the window without another word. The city lights blurred through the rain-streaked glass. Traffic was jammed. My chest felt as heavy as the cloudy sky above us. Thunder rumbled somewhere far away. The silence between us crackled. I remembered how we met. It was a blind date by accident. I walked into the wrong booth. She mistook me for someone else. We talked awkwardly at first, but then we found common ground: Nolan films, Kawabata novels, and yes, even fishing. When her real blind date finally arrived, we laughed about the mix-up and exchanged contacts. A few weeks later, we got matched again, this time on purpose. "Seems like fate," she said. "Maybe we should give it a try." That's how we started. And for a while, it was beautiful. It wasn't fireworks, it was steady, warm. Like a campfire you can sit around forever. Until Ryan showed up again, and Emily's composure cracked. Just a little. Just enough for me to see the panic behind her eyes as she slammed on the brakes and pulled over beside him. "Ryan Kim," she yelled over the rain. "Are you out of your mind? Why are you standing here like a statue?" Her voice shook. Her hands trembled. I had never seen her like this, not even once in 3 years. He looked up at her like he'd been waiting for a sign. "Ryan," he croaked, calling her by the name only he used. "You'd never leave me on the side of the road." I sat there, watching their story continue without me. She invited him into the car. He got in the back seat. "He's just a friend," she explained without meeting my eyes. Then why hadn't she said hello when she first saw him? Why did she panic? Why did her hands tremble? I didn't ask. I already knew. We stopped by a pharmacy so she could buy some Chinese medicine for me, apparently. While she was inside, Ryan turned to me. "I'm her ex," he said, like it was a victory. "Love is weird, isn't it? You get the shade, but I planted the tree." His tone was bitter, soaked with years of unresolved emotions. I didn't respond. I didn't need to. A week earlier, he'd texted Emily asking to get back together. That night, she drank half a bottle of red wine alone on the balcony. Her phone didn't have a password. I had never snooped before. But that night, I did. She told him, "I'm getting married soon." Not, "I love my fiancé." Not, "I don't love you." Just, "I'm getting married soon." I tracked his social media. Photos. Mementos. A Lego set she built for him over 3 nights. A star she named after him. She had loved him like a storm. Passionate. Messy. Real. Me. I was the eye of the storm. Safe. Silent. I gave her everything a husband should give, but I wasn't the one she gave her chaos to. I realized then she gave Ryan all her clumsy, desperate, irrational love. And she gave me a resume. When she came back to the car with the medicine, I watched her carefully. She looked like the perfect woman. Tall. Composed. Cold. If she had been just a random blind date, I would have married her in a heartbeat. She was the perfect match on paper. But the paper didn't warm me up. "Emily," I said quietly. "Let's break up." She blinked. Her eyes shimmered, but she didn't cry. She asked for a reason. I said, "Do you think love or compatibility matters more?" Without hesitating, she replied, "Compatibility." My throat tightened. Why not both? She had no answer. Only silence. So I gave it for her, because love is messy. And marriage wants order. I stepped out of the car and walked away without looking back. She didn't run after me. She didn't stop me. And that told me everything. I didn't expect breaking off an engagement to feel so quiet, so anticlimactic, like a window slowly being shut on a sunny afternoon instead of a storm tearing down the house. That night after I left Emily, I didn't go home. I wandered the city, ended up at a friend's gathering, and sat there silently as the others drank and laughed. My glass kept refilling itself. I kept losing in every game we played. When it came time for truth or dare, I picked truth like a coward. "What was your 18th birthday wish?" someone asked. I lifted the glass to my lips, but someone pulled it from me. "Nope," they said. "You picked truth. You're not getting out of it." The karaoke machine played soft Cantonese love songs in the background while I lowered my eyes and stared at my hands. That wish had been buried so deep it surprised me that I still remembered it. I had wished that Emily Carter back then, just a beautiful, distant girl at school, would look at me, really look at me. That's it. Just once. Back then, she was the moon and I was just a shadow in the hallway. She had a boyfriend in another city, and I was the guy who blushed when I saw someone who looked like her from behind. Even in college, that silhouette haunted me. But when I finally got close to her, when we started dating, it wasn't because of fate or timing, it was because I pushed for it. When we had our second blind date, I knew it was her. An uncle from the hospital had asked what kind of girl I liked, and I basically described Emily without using her name. He found her. I pretended it was a coincidence, but it was a setup mine. That was the only way I knew how to chase something I never thought I'd catch. I had studied her, memorized her preferences, the way she tilted her head when confused, the way she liked her coffee with oat milk and no sugar. But no matter how much I tried to become the man she'd love, I was never the one she cried for. Back home, I brewed sobering tea for myself. Funny thing, I used to make that same tea for her. Emily rarely drank, but whenever her friends dragged her out for a night, I'd get a message asking me to come pick her up. Every time, I'd wrap her in my coat and bring her home. She'd mumble apologies and laugh at how troublesome she was. I'd always tell her I didn't mind. "If you're trouble, then I guess I like trouble," I once said. I actually meant it. I thought about making sobering tea for her for the rest of my life. But now, I sat there alone, sipping it while a notification popped up on my phone. Emily. The message was sent the night before. "If we're breaking up, you can take it back. I don't mind. But if you really insist, I'll speak to both families." I stared at it for a long time. She wanted to carry all the fallout herself. The hotels, the venue, the honeymoon bookings, the wedding photographer, the down payment for the apartment canceling, all that was a logistical nightmare. Facing both sets of parents. That was the real war. But I couldn't let her do it alone. So I replied, "I'll handle it. I'll tell them myself. I'll take the blame." She texted back almost instantly. "James, you don't have to do this. I'm fine." That was always her line. I'm fine. She was fine when we fought, fine when we made up, fine when I said goodbye. I remembered the early days when her calmness felt like waves lapping against my heart. Gentle, rhythmic, reassuring. But over time, those waves grew colder. Harder. They didn't warm me anymore. They froze me. In the morning, after the worst hangover of my life, I remembered something else, something that burned. My best friend, Nathan Reed, had been at the party. He saw me drunk, sobbing, slurring Emily's name. In that moment of impulsive loyalty, he pulled out his phone and called her. I slapped the phone out of his hand. "Don't call her," I said. "We're over." But he had already recorded part of my meltdown. And I didn't know yet what he'd do with it. When I told my parents about the broken engagement, my mom exploded. "Do you even realize what you're throwing away?" she shouted. "Emily Carter is a once-in-a-lifetime woman. You put her back on the market, and guys will be lining up in minutes." I let her rant. Then my dad quietly stepped in and pulled her into the kitchen. Over the roar of the range hood, I heard him sigh and say, "That box of nuts she bought for us, our son's allergic to nuts." 3 years together, and she never remembered. It wasn't said with malice, just tired resignation. In the weeks that followed, I started to breathe again. I focused on my work at the law firm. I smiled more. Laughed again. It felt like I was rediscovering who I was before I molded myself into the ideal man for someone who never really looked back at me. Then one day, 6 months later, I ran into Emily. She was walking down the street, arm in arm with Ryan Kim. She looked happy. Genuinely happy in a way I hadn't seen before. Her smile was carefree, and her eyes sparkled. I stood across the street and watched them for a few seconds longer than I should have. My chest tightened, but I didn't look away. They didn't notice me. I didn't try to stop them. I just turned and walked the other way. She was finally laughing the way she used to laugh with him. I guess they found their way back. I don't blame her. Honestly, I was glad I let go before I broke completely. A month after that, I was assigned a trial in Chicago court. Civil case. I showed up early and found out the opposing counsel was someone I hadn't seen in years. Olivia Yu. She was my classmate back in college. Funny how life circles back. The courtroom was small, and our desks were practically touching. As we waited for the judge, she leaned over and whispered, "Looks like we're within arm's reach again, huh?" I laughed. Her energy hadn't changed one bit. During the trial, the defendant lost control and tried to attack the plaintiff. In the chaos, I nearly got punched, but Olivia yanked me out of harm's way. The judge scolded us both after the session. Outside, we laughed about it like old friends, walking side by side down the courthouse steps. She turned to me and said, "James, are you still the guy who gets jealous of a girl's back?" I blinked, and then I remembered. In college, I used to follow Olivia sometimes, thinking she was Emily because their backs looked so similar. Same height. Same walk. But up close, they were completely different. Emily was the moon gentle, cool, always distant. Olivia was the sunbright, spontaneous, impossible to ignore. After college, she confessed to me once. But I was too full of my silent obsession with Emily to make space for anyone else. Olivia got the message. She quietly stepped back into the role of a friend. We stood at the station, saying goodbye. But just before she turned to leave, she called out, "James." I turned back. I used to think I showed up too late. But maybe I'm just on time now. Can we give it a try? I smiled. We're almost 30. You sure you're ready for long distance? Maybe, she said. Maybe not. But I've never stopped walking toward you. She disappeared into the crowd. That question I asked Emily kept circling back: love or compatibility? With Emily, I chased love and lost compatibility. With Olivia, I avoided love because I thought we weren't a match. Maybe I was wrong on both ends. Maybe it's not about picking one. Maybe the right person makes both possible. And Olivia? She wasn't done walking toward me. Not even close. Half a month passed before I saw Olivia Yu again, but this time, it wasn't some coincidence at court or a text message sent late at night. This time, she showed up at my office, sitting at the desk right across from mine like she'd always been there. I stopped mid-step in the hallway, blinking at the sight of her unpacking folders, setting up her nameplate, arranging pens like it was the most natural thing in the world. "You transferred?" I asked, my voice somewhere between surprise and disbelief. She didn't even look up as she replied, "Yeah, didn't I mention? I accepted the job offer here last week. I'm part of your firm now." That was a lie. She hadn't mentioned anything, because I would have remembered. She looked up with that same playful glint in her eyes. "What? You think only young people are allowed to switch cities for love?" My heart stuttered. There was no trace of hesitation in her movements, no dramatics, no "choose me or else" nonsense. Just Olivia, being her usual bold, unapologetic self. "You moved here for me?" I asked, even though I already knew the answer. She shrugged, "I'm not here to rush you. I just figured I've spent enough time walking in circles. Might as well walk toward something real. Toward you." And that was how Olivia Yu came back into my life, not as a college classmate, not as a maybe from the past, but as a woman who had quietly decided that if I wasn't going to run after her, she'd walk into my space until I noticed her for real. She didn't pressure me. Didn't demand an answer. She just showed up in small ways, bringing coffee with no sugar and oat milk because she remembered, leaving me notes when I forgot to eat lunch, suggesting we grab dinner when I worked late and missed every delivery cutoff. She made herself a part of my routine until I started to notice how much better my days felt with her in them. I remembered the thing she once told me in college, back when I was obsessed with Emily Carter's silhouette from afar: don't love someone who only shows you their back. Love the one who's running toward you. And now here she was, showing me what that looked like in real time. One weekend, we went out to eat at a little French bistro downtown. The waiter seated us, and as I looked up, I froze. Sitting at the table beside us were Emily and Ryan. Emily looked up too. Our eyes met. Her smile faltered for half a second before she regained her composure. "James," she said politely. "Long time no see." Ryan gave me a quick nod. What a coincidence. Olivia glanced at me, then at them, and with zero hesitation replied, "Not his girlfriend yet, still chasing him." There was a beat of silence at the table next to us. Emily's eyes flicked toward me, unreadable. I just smiled and reached for my water. I didn't owe her an explanation. We were strangers now. During the meal, Emily received a call and her expression changed immediately. "My grandma's missing," she said to Ryan as she stood up. "Let's go find her." Ryan waved a hand dismissively. "Relax, she probably just went for a walk." "She has Alzheimer's," Emily snapped. "Did you forget that again?" I remembered something and stood up. "She wears the GPS watch I bought her, right? Open the tracking app." Her eyes widened. She pulled out her phone, opened the app, and immediately found her grandma's location. Her shoulders sagged with relief. "Thank you, James." The way she looked at me just then, grateful, a little guilty, something else she couldn't name. I twisted something in my chest, but not in the same way it used to. After dinner, Olivia and I walked to the supermarket. She had just moved and still needed to stock up on everything. The store was running a promotional event: spend enough and you got 3 lottery chances. She failed the first 2, then handed me the third. "Your turn," she said, "maybe you'll have better luck." I won the grand prize. A 2-person trip to Turkey. Round-trip airfare, hotels included. It was almost May Day weekend. She looked at me with that signature grin. "So James, want to go to Turkey with me?" I chuckled. I can't say no to someone who just won me free airfare. When I got home that night, I had a message from Emily. "My grandma's fine. She missed you. That's why she left the house. She went looking for you." My chest tightened a little. "Is she okay?" I asked. "Yes," Emily replied, "just frightened. She's been asking about you a lot lately. I told her I'd visit in a few days. And I did." When I showed up, Emily was already there. Her grandmother had forgotten who I was again, but when she saw me, she smiled and called me her grandson-in-law like nothing had changed. I didn't have the heart to correct her. As we walked out, Emily turned to me and asked, "Do you have time over May Day? Let me treat you to dinner. For everything you've done." I hesitated. "I'm traveling to Turkey with Olivia," I said. Her lips parted slightly. "The friend from the restaurant?" I nodded. She didn't say anything right away. Her smile was tight. "Have a good trip," she said softly. "Thank you again." In Turkey, Olivia and I visited the Museum of Innocence in Istanbul. I'd read the novel years ago, but standing inside the actual museum felt surreal. There was a wall lined with over 4,000 cigarette butts, each labeled with the day the woman in the story had smoked it. Olivia's eyes glistened as she turned to me and whispered, "If I kept every memory of you, I'd need a museum too." Later in Cappadocia, just before dawn, we rode a hot air balloon together. Dozens of balloons took off into the sky. As we floated above the rocky, moonlight terrain, she opened her camera roll and showed me something that made my throat tighten: photos of me. All kinds. Me working. Me smiling. Me mid-blink. "You secretly took pictures of me?" I asked. "You're a stalker." She laughed. "You're lucky I'm a cute stalker." She leaned in and said, "I've been collecting little versions of you for a long time. This is my Museum of Innocence." And suddenly I couldn't speak. For the first time in years, someone hadn't just seen Methy, had remembered me, preserved me, cherished me. I teased her back. "You're weird. You're a snob. You're clingy. You're cold. You're pushy. You're annoying." We both laughed. The trip back took nearly 11 hours. Somewhere over the Atlantic, turbulence hit. Not the light kind violent, bone-shaking turbulence that made the plane dip hard enough for the oxygen masks to drop. People screamed. Some cried. Others pulled out their phones and started recording their goodbyes. My hands trembled as I opened my messages and typed one to Nathan. I didn't dare text my parents. I didn't want them panicking unless it was real. I just told Nathan, if something happens, tell them I love them. I hit send. I was still holding Olivia's hand. She was pale but calm. James, she whispered. If we make it out of this, can we be together? The plane dropped again. I closed my eyes. Yes, I breathed. Yes. We landed. Somehow. Safely. As we walked out of the airport hand in hand at 5 a.m., my heart still beating like a war drum, I didn't expect to see Emily Carter standing there in the arrival crowd. Her eyes were red, her hair messy, like she hadn't slept. When she saw me and Olivia, her gaze dropped to our interlocked fingers. She looked like she wanted to say something, maybe hug me, but instead, she stepped back and said, "I'm glad you're okay." I sent Olivia to get the car. Emily waited until she was out of sight, then turned to me and asked, "Why didn't you ever tell me?" I didn't understand. She pulled out her phone. Nathan had sent her a video. The video. The one where I cried drunk and confessed how I'd loved her for years without ever saying a word. He had captured it, Almy's silent crush, the way I followed her in high school, the photos, the heartbreak. She watched it, and finally saw it all. "You like me that long?" she asked. If I had known, her voice cracked. But before she could finish, Olivia called. I pulled out my phone, but Emily grabbed my wrist. "James," she said, "I broke up with Ryan." I froze. "You don't need to tell me," I said. "It doesn't change anything." But her eyes were desperate. "Please don't go with her." For 3 years, I had wished she'd say that. Now that she did, it was too late. I gently pulled my wrist from her grasp. "I'm with Olivia," I said. "I'm finally with someone who walks toward me." Emily didn't speak again. She just stood there as I walked away. A week after we got back from Turkey, I saw Emily Carter again at our high school's anniversary celebration, the same campus where my story with her had quietly begun years ago and now somehow found a way to close its last lingering chapter. I was walking through the courtyard when I caught sight of her standing at the foot of the spiral staircase, her gaze lifted toward the rooftop where students had gathered to watch the evening fireworks. For a moment, she looked exactly like the girl I fell for in 10th grade, elegant posture, white sweater, hair brushed neatly over her shoulders, but when our eyes met, something in her expression shifted. Recognition. Bittersweet recognition. She walked toward me with small, hesitant steps, like she wasn't sure whether she should smile or apologize. "James," she said quietly, "so it turns out we met much earlier than I remembered. It was under this staircase, wasn't it?" I nodded slowly. She remembered. The same place where her friends once laughed at my worn coat, a hand-me-down from my cousin, and she, trying to save my pride, smiled and said I wore it better than she did. That moment had lit a flame in my chest that I carried for years, thinking it would warm me forever. Now that same memory stung like a cold breeze. I didn't respond right away. Instead, I walked with her toward the field where the crowd had gathered for the show. Fireworks lit up the sky, bursts of gold and red cascading above us like confessions too big for words. I instinctively pulled out my phone to snap a few photos. Without thinking, I sent them to Olivia. Under the noise and sparkle, Emily's voice slipped through like a sigh. "James, it's Marquez. You like Marquez, not Kawabata. You don't even like fishing. You prefer Spielberg to Nolan. You don't eat nuts. You don't like spicy food. And you always take your coffee with oat milk." I remembered all of it, finally. "I'm sorry it took so long." I turned to her slowly, unsure of what to say. For so long, I had wished she would just notice. Just one sign that I wasn't invisible. And now, standing beside me in a crowd of strangers, she finally said what I had wanted to hear for years. "I want to remember you properly," she added. "Not as someone I let walk away." My chest tightened, not from longing, but from the ache of belated understanding. "Emily," I said gently, "we broke off our engagement. You had your reasons, I had mine. But that version of us, it's over. And I think we both know it." She didn't argue. Her eyes shimmered under the glow of the fireworks, but she didn't cry. Instead, she whispered, "Can I walk toward you instead, now?" The firework that launched just then spelled out the name of our school, bright, loud, impossible to miss. But she hadn't looked up in time. When she finally did, it had already dissipated into smoke. She stared at the empty sky for a beat, then smiled bitterly. "Too late," she murmured. "It would have been better if I looked up earlier." And just like that, the girl who had once been my moonlight turned back toward the shadows. After the celebration, she offered to drive me home. I declined politely and pointed to the car waiting at the gate. Olivia stood beside it, waving casually. Emily's shoulders stiffened, but she didn't say a word. I got in and didn't look back. But through the side mirror, I saw her walking away, slower than usual, her steps heavy, almost reluctant. I had seen her back countless times before, confident, graceful, composed, but this was the first time it looked fragile, like she was carrying the weight of everything she hadn't said earlier. Olivia didn't ask about her. She didn't need to. She just glanced at me and teased, "So, how does it feel to win the lottery and still miss the expiration date?" I laughed softly. "I never won a prize. So I wouldn't know." She rolled her eyes. "There's a sour smell in the car. Must be that old emotional baggage we just passed by. Should I wash it out or should we change cars entirely?" I took her hand without answering, lacing my fingers with hers. She looked down at our interlocked hands and then back at me with a small smile. "Okay, fine. We'll drive this one," she whispered. The wind slipped through the open window, bringing with it the scent of spring flowers, and for the first time in a long time, I felt peace settling in my chest instead of dust. We had both come from places of longing, both once stood in the wrong place at the wrong time, both made choices we regretted, but now, sitting side by side in the same car, driving toward the same future, it finally felt right. I once thought loving someone like Emily meant being the boat crossing a vast ocean, always worrying about storms, always fearing I'd capsize. But now, with Olivia, it felt like I was standing on solid ground, watching the tide roll in without fear of drowning. Still, even peace had its price. In the quiet days that followed, I found myself thinking about all the versions of Emily I had built in my mind: the soft-spoken girl under the staircase, the poised woman behind the wheel, the stranger who had once held my hand like she meant it. I wasn't angry at her anymore. Just tired of carrying the weight of a love that never belonged to me. One evening, Olivia invited me over to her new place. She was still unpacking, and I offered to help. Her apartment was a mess of boxes, bubble wrap, and takeout containers, but it felt alive, lived in, chaotic, warm. We ordered pizza and sat cross-legged on the floor. She pulled out a dusty photo album I didn't know existed. Inside were snapshots from college, notes I'd scribbled on the back of case files, sticky notes she'd saved. "You kept all this?" I asked. "Of course," she replied. "I wasn't just watching your back in college, James. I was watching your whole damn story." I didn't know what to say. So I kissed her. Slowly, gently, with the weight of everything I'd been too afraid to give. Her fingers found mine, and just like that, we wrote a new beginning in a room filled with cardboard and sentiment. That night, I dreamed of high school again. But this time, it wasn't Emily under the staircase. It was Olivia, her hair tied messily, wearing an oversized hoodie, holding a coffee and waving at me. In the dream, I walked toward her without hesitation. And when I reached her, she smiled and said, "It's about time." When I woke up, sunlight streamed through the blinds. She was still asleep, curled beside me, and I realized something profound: she had become my morning. The woman I once saw as second choice had turned out to be the best thing that ever happened to me. And for the first time in years, I wasn't chasing shadows. I was standing in the light. But fate, as always, had one more twist waiting. And I didn't see it coming. I didn't expect the final thread between me and Emily Carter to unravel in the most unexpected, almost petty way through a video message, of all things. It happened one rainy Thursday night when I was reorganizing case files and nursing a cold with a mug of ginger tea. I had barely touched dinner when Nathan Reed, my best friend and eternal chaos enabler, messaged me. Did she ever say anything about the video? I stared at the screen for a second before typing, "What video?" His reply came instantly, "I sent it to her." My chest tightened. I knew exactly what video he meant. Half a year ago, when I was blacked out drunk and bawling at the Truth or Dare party, Nathan had quietly recorded a montage of clips at confessional of my high school crush on Emily, my 3-year-long silent chase, the ridiculous things I did to stay in her orbit, the birthday wish I never said out loud, the way I had cried like a damn child over a woman who didn't even look back. He had told me back then it was supposed to be my wedding gift, a tribute to my devotion. I thought he deleted it when we called the engagement off. But apparently, not only did he keep it, sent it to her. Why? I finally asked. He replied with a single line, "If your plane had gone down, I wanted her to suffer." I closed the chat, heart pounding. Suddenly, all the puzzle pieces from that morning at the airport clicked into place: her teary eyes, the frantic way she'd shown up, the way she tried to hug me then stopped. It wasn't just relief. It was guilt. And then I got a message. From Emily. I didn't know, it read. "I never knew how much you loved me, not really. I thought we were just convenient. I thought I was the one settling." I didn't reply. I didn't even know what to say. She followed up. James, if I had known earlier, if I had seen that video before, maybe everything would have been different." I sat there in silence, phone in one hand, tea cooling on the table, thunder rolling in the distance like the world itself was stalling for time. I opened the video again, watched myself stagger through memories, drunk but heartbreakingly honest, telling Nathan how Emily had once worn the same coat as me, how I saved every picture where she appeared in the background, how I memorized her favorite authors, her allergy to nuts, her inability to handle spicy food, how I adjusted myself to fit her like a glove she never asked for. And then that clip half a year ago when I cried and whispered in a cracked voice, I really thought she was the one. I watched the screen blur from tears, mine, past and present. And I realized something that both healed me and hurt me: she saw it too late. She saw me too late. The next weekend, Olivia and I were invited to a friend's birthday dinner. The moment we walked into the restaurant, I noticed Emily sitting across the room with mutual friends. She looked up. Our eyes locked. She didn't smile. Neither did I. Olivia sensed it and gently squeezed my hand. After dinner, as we were walking to the car, Emily approached. "Can I talk to James for a moment?" she asked Olivia directly. I froze, but Olivia just nodded, handed me the keys, and said she'd wait in the car. The moment we were alone, Emily looked up at me like we were back under the fireworks. "Why didn't you tell me sooner?" she asked. "Why did I have to find out from someone else?" I exhaled slowly. "Because it wasn't your burden. Because I didn't want to guilt you into loving me." "I didn't need guilt," she said softly. "I needed clarity. I needed to understand what you felt." "Would it have changed anything?" I asked. She didn't answer. That was answer enough. She took a breath, voice trembling now. "I broke up with Ryan, you know. For real. Not because I wanted you back. But because I finally realized I was always chasing someone who never knew how to love without hurting me. But with you, you made it feel safe. Maybe too safe." "And you didn't want safe," I replied. "You wanted chaos. Passion. You wanted someone who'd fight you, break you, and still kiss you like the world was ending." "I wanted love," she said. "I just didn't know it could be quiet." Her eyes searched mine. Are you happy? Yes, I said without hesitation. I am. She nodded slowly, blinking hard. Good. That's good. Then she reached into her bag and pulled out something wrapped into a small, silver tie clip. I bought this for our wedding day, she said, placing it in my hand. I don't know what to do with it now. But it feels wrong to keep it. I looked at the item in my palm. Simple, elegant, something that would have gone perfectly with the suit I never wore to the altar. Thanks, I said, pocketing it. I hope you find what you're looking for, Emily. I already did, she replied. But I was too late. And that was the last real conversation we ever had. I walked back to Olivia's car, slid into the passenger seat, and turned to her. She didn't ask anything. She just reached over and laced her fingers through mine. Do I need to be jealous? She asked casually. Not even a little, I said. But if I ever write a memoir, she might get a chapter. Only a chapter, she teased. Okay, maybe two. But the ending will be all you. Damn right it will, she smirked, kissing my cheek. Life settled after that. We worked. We laughed. We fought over which Netflix show to binge. We went grocery shopping together and debated over almond butter or peanut. I memorized the way she liked her eggs sunny side up with cracked pepper and how she preferred to sleep with one pillow tucked between her legs. We didn't burn with madness. We bloomed slowly, like ivy crawling over a windowsill, patient and inevitable. And then one day, months later, while folding laundry on a lazy Sunday, she said, James, do you think we're compatible? I paused, sock in hand, and looked at her. Why? She shrugged. Just wondering. I used to think compatibility meant shared interests, aligned goals, matching Spotify tastes. But now I think it's just being able to disagree and still want to wake up next to each other. I smiled. Then yeah. I think we're more than compatible. More than lovable, she added. Definitely that. She leaned over and kissed me, and somewhere in the corner of the room, sunlight hit the tie clip Emily had returned, sitting forgotten on the shelf. It caught the light and flashed once before I turned away from it completely. Olivia was my present, my choice, my answered question. The one who ran toward me when everyone else walked away. And in the end, that made all the difference. It's strange how the heart remembers in fragments smells, colors, certain kinds of silence but forgets in full sentences, like it's trying to rewrite your life for you in a kinder voice than the one you lived it in, and months after Emily gave me back that silver tie clip and disappeared from my day-to-day orbit, I finally stopped looking over my shoulder for what-ifs and ghosts dressed like fate, because the truth is, even when someone leaves gently, they still leave, and not every beautiful memory deserves a sequel. Some just need a frame and a quiet place in your chest where they can stop pulsing and start resting, and Olivia helped me get there without even trying, just by existing in my life like gravity, constant, reliable, a force I didn't have to think about but could always trust to be there when I needed grounding. And one morning, after a chaotic grocery run where we forgot half the list and came home with 3 different brands of oat milk because neither of us could remember which one she liked best, I looked at her barefoot, hair messy, unpacking bags on the kitchen counter while humming off-key to a 2000s throwback, and it hit me like a sucker punch that I was in love with her, truly, fully, the kind of love that doesn't need fireworks or fate or grand apologies under the rain. Just this quiet certainty that I'd rather argue about oat milk with her for the next 50 years than write poems about someone else's memory for the next 5, and when I told her I loved her, she blinked like she didn't expect it so suddenly on a Wednesday, then smiled and said, "Took you long enough," and later that night, lying in bed, legs tangled together, she told me she'd known I loved her long before I did, that it was in the way I stopped checking my phone every 5 minutes, in how I stopped bringing up Emily in passing like she was still part of my future instead of just a shadow of my past, and I asked her if it ever bothered her that I had loved someone so long, so hard, in such silence, and she said, "No, because you stopped," and I think that was the first time I realized that letting go doesn't always look like slamming a door. Sometimes it's just no longer flinching when their name pops up or no longer measuring someone new against someone old, and I didn't notice when it happened, but one day I looked at Olivia and didn't see her as the girl who came after Emily. I just saw her As she was, all sunshine and sarcasm and unsent drafts in her notes app, and the funny thing about closure is that it never shows up on time, it just quietly unpacks itself in the middle of your life until one day you wake up and realize the suitcase is empty, the grief is folded, the longing has expired, and you're okay, and that's what happened to me. I was okay, we were okay, better than okay, and it was during one of those okay days that I got a wedding invitation, not from Emily, not yet, but from someone in our old circle, and Olivia nudged me at breakfast and said, "You think she'll be there?" And I shrugged and said, "Maybe," and we both knew exactly who we meant without saying it, and at the wedding, under chandeliers and string lights, among people who used to know me when I was still chasing dreams I didn't know how to articulate, I saw her across the room in a midnight blue dress, sipping wine, smiling at someone's joke, and for the first time, I didn't feel the sting of something unfinished, didn't feel the urge to walk over and ask questions we both already knew the answers to, but when our eyes met, she walked over anyway, like muscle memory, and we stood near the dessert table like people who used to mean everything and now meant something much gentler, and she looked at Olivia, then back at me, and said, "She looks good on you," and I smiled, "She feels good too," and Emily chuckled, softer this time, and said, "You look like you're finally where you belong," and I nodded, "I am," and maybe that was her closure. And mine too, and she didn't stay long after that, just a short conversation, one last glance, and she was gone, and the rest of the night was just music and laughter and Olivia pulling me to dance even though I had 2 left feet, and it was messy and awkward and perfect, and on the way home, she leaned her head on my shoulder and said, "One day, I want a wedding like that," and I kissed her forehead and whispered, "I'd marry you in a gas station parking lot if it meant you'd keep looking at me like this," and she laughed, "Please don't." But noted, and weeks turned to months, and one morning we were brushing our teeth side by side, and she said, "I want to adopt a dog," and I said, "Only if we name him Spielberg," and she rolled her eyes but agreed, and we did, and it's weird how normal things become once you stop holding your breath, how the extraordinary settles into everyday routines, how the person you almost miss becomes the person you can't imagine walking through life without, and maybe Emily was right all along. Maybe compatibility does matter, but only when it's layered with love, with real, ugly, imperfect love that laughs when you snore and forgives you when you forget the eggs and shows up anyway when you're tired or late or not your best self. And now, when I walk down streets we used to haunt, I don't think about who didn't love me back the way I needed, I think about who loves me now exactly the way I didn't know I deserved. And if you ask me today what my 18-year-old self would say about where I ended up, I think he'd smile and say, "Took us long enough, but we made it," and maybe that's the real win, not the girl you once cried for, but the woman who wipes your tears before they ever fall, not the memory you chased for years, but the person who chose to stay without needing to be chased. And when Olivia walks into the room now, I don't look at her and see fate, I see choice, I see freedom, I see home.